Okay, we next on our agenda, we'll invite, this will be agenda item number 6, our monthly budget report. Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, and we apologize, we're running a little bit behind here. Our goal would be to move forward as well as we can, but we do have our next time certain is at 1:30, and someone's going to try to squeeze a quick lunch in between now and then. So Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, monthly budget report.
Chair Huntsman, thanks. Members of the board, good afternoon. This is the monthly budget report. The Utah State Board of Education is fiscally sound. We're able to meet all of our obligations and/or commitments, all known obligations and commitments, with additional resources for any unanticipated events to a certain extent. These backups is what is the period 2 report. So, the fiscal year started in July. So this is a summary of July and August, or up to the end of August, for your review. Chair Huntsman and members of the board, we're also tracking very well in the CARES Act funding, meaning, obligations and, allowable uses. You can see the report, the monthly budget report for our sections. It's displayed now for your review. At this time, Chair Huntsman, I'd like to turn it over to Sarah Young, with your permission to provide details behind that, and then seek a motion and approval from the board.
Before she goes, Scott, before we have Sarah Young speak to this, I just need to clean one thing up. I referred to this as item number 6. It's actually number 5. I have it kind of wrong on my chair's report, so I apologize, but this is item number 5. Thank you.
I acknowledge, sir. Thank you. So with your permission, can we turn it over to Sarah? And once she's done, sir, I do need to ask that we come back to the board's discretionary fund report, because we have an action on that as well.
Okay. So we'll have Sarah Young.
Thank you, Chair Huntsman. So Sarah Young, Director of Strategic Initiatives. I'm here today to speak with you about 2 potential action items in regards to CARES Act and the Coronavirus Relief Fund. So the specific funding that we're referencing was appropriated to the State Board of Education in House Bill 6002 in the August 2020 special session. And so within that funding, this is the Coronavirus Relief Fund, money that was appropriated to the state and has now been passed through to the agency. We are seeking 2 action items in regards to authorizing this money to be distributed to our LEA partners in regards to meeting 2 separate needs associated with COVID-19. The first one is for the K-12 Personal Protective Equipment, or PPE, grant opportunity. So as I'm sure you're familiar, the State Board of Education has engaged in some procurement efforts on behalf of all of our K-12 entities within the state. In terms of moving us forward as a community, we did a survey of our superintendents as well as of our charter school directors. And in hearing back on their individual needs, we really found that those needs were pretty diverse and specific to the local community. So in that regard, as opposed to the state continuing to do a state procurement, we are seeking your approval to be able to distribute the remaining funds to each of the LEAs using a $5,000 base and then a disbursement model based on the recent September 9th head count. So that is the first motion, and I will pause to see if there's any questions about that item. And then, Chair, I'm happy to address the second item as well.
Okay, board members, we don't have a motion on the table, but do you have any questions? Board member Earl?
Sarah, let me make sure I'm understanding this. This is the remaining funds in this particular area.
So that is correct.
Correct.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, we heard you. That is correct. So it's a
Are-
board member Earl. Do you have a
Okay, so
follow-up?
this, okay, thank you.
Okay, board member Lear.
Yes, I just had a question of Sarah Young, if it's okay.
You bet.
I'm looking at the explanation of how this will be spent and how the grants will be distributed, and I'm a little bit concerned, or maybe I just want reassurance, that there are clearly LEAs that need this more than others in areas that maybe have greater needs than other areas. And is there any allowance for that? First part of the question. Second part of the question, will there be any follow-up? And I'm not trying to harass LEAs in this very difficult time, but will there be any follow-up to make sure that the funds were spent appropriately? It's not a huge amount of money, but it's significant. So I would want to have both those to see if you're evaluating who needs it the most, and secondly, is there going to be any follow-up about compliance?
Thank you, Board Member Lear. So to your first question, the current proposed model is really a qualified grant where all of our LEAs were in the projected distributions would be receiving the $5,000 base plus headcount. We have heard from our LEA leaders through both our charter directors as well as our superintendents that the needs are pretty diverse across the state. We definitely recognize that there are some areas that have experienced more COVID cases, but I think it's important to note that all of our LEAs are really in a prevention mode when it comes to PPE. And so recognizing that that prevention needs to happen statewide is why we chose to approach the drafting of this grant in the way that we did. To the second question in regards to monitoring and follow-up, I will note that this is a reimbursement grant. So they are required to actually submit documentation to this office for review to be able to reimburse them for those allowable expenses. That provides staff an opportunity to be able to review those expenses and make sure they're in alignment with both the federal guidelines as well as the plans that were approved through the Utah Grants Management System.
Thank you. I didn't read reimbursement or hear reimbursement, so that answers my question. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so Sarah Young, please continue.
So the second grant item that we are proposing for consideration to the State Board of Education is the K-12 Coronavirus Relief Grant. So in the August special session, the legislature in their appropriation of this funding provided a direction to provide funds to the system in regards to classroom supplies, enhancements, and equipment. So this grant would basically take those funds as appropriated by the legislature, again, establish a distribution model of $5,000 base per LEA, and then plus the headcount reported on September 9th to allow LEAs to submit a grant that would also be a reimbursement grant for this particular fund specific to needs in those three areas.
Any questions from board members? Seeing none, did you have anything else you wanted to add, Sarah Young?
No, we were just seeking the motion and the action items associated with both of these grants, if that was something the board wanted to authorize.
Okay, Board Member Belknap.
Chair, it might be helpful if we posted it, but I can read. I would like to make a motion that the board approve USBE staffing set aside up to $2,582,907 from the Utah K-12 coronavirus. I have to move my screen. Fund. I think there might be something that comes after that. Fund money.
So the totals I think it's what I'm seeing in my numbers, and maybe Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, who's always right on the right number, is
Okay.
I'm seeing $2,852,907. So it
Okay, sorry, Chair, I was looking differently. So I would like to make the motion that we approve the motion number 1 that's on the board.
Okay, so can I read that motion and then you see if you agree with it? And that motion is that the board approve USBE staff set aside up to $2,852,907 from the Utah K-12 Coronavirus Relief Fund to award local education agency grants with a $5,000 base award for K-12 personal protective equipment solutions.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that, Chair Huntsman, Mark Marsh.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Okay, discussion to the motion. I'm seeing none. So the motion before the board, and we'll vote after I read it again, is that the board approve USBE staff set aside up to $2,852,907 from the Utah K-12 Coronavirus Relief Fund to award local education agency grants with a $5,000 base award for K-12 personal protective equipment solutions. Board members, at this time, please vote. That's the motion. It appears the voting is complete and the voting is unanimous. Well, no, let's see, I'm waiting for one. There it is. And it appears the voting is unanimous. Am I seeing Board Member Nielsen? Is he still with us, or did you've been trying to join us with his? I don't think he's with us. So the motion passes unanimously. Is that how you see it, Vice Chair Cummins?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So there is a second proposed motion, and maybe I can be helpful here and read it so we get the numbers right. And that is that the board approves staff setting aside up to $14,100,000 from the Utah K-12 Coronavirus Relief Fund to award local education agencies grants with a $5,000 base award for K through 12 coronavirus solutions for classroom supplies, enhancements, and equipment.
So moved.
Second, Board Member Cannon.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Board Member Belknap, you want to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Okay, discussion to the motion. Board Member Lear.
I wonder if we could add in there somewhere just the word reimbursement. I'm looking for the best place just so it's clear that these grants are, it's a reimbursement grant.
Okay, where's
local education agency reimbursement grants, or on a reimbursement basis or something along those lines. I would accept anybody's language. I just want it understood.
Let's see where we can put it in, and without objection, we'll leave that in. Is there a good safe place? Or we can include in the motion that reimbursement is listed. So let's just find the best place for it to fit. So we have fantastic staff that knows how to just put the right word in the right place. Scott?
What about after award?
Yeah, so if I may, Chair, you can say with a $5,000 base award for K through 12 coronavirus relief solution for purchase, for reimbursement of purchase.
Or, yeah, for reimbursement for.
So, okay. So the motion, we can see that on our screen.
Get rid of all that other stuff.
Okay, so for the motion maker, are you good that we include for reimbursement or it's placed?
Yes,
And was it, who did the second?
Janet.
Janet, are you good with the second?
Sure.
So without objection, it would read that the board approve USBE staff setting aside up to $14,100,000 from the Utah K-12 Coronavirus Relief Fund to award local education agency grant with a $5,000 base award for K-12 coronavirus relief solution for reimbursement for classroom supplies, enhancements, and equipment. Okay, discussion. Board Member Earl.
Sarah, and I don't know if you stated this, who is doing the reviewing of these grant applications?
So those are reviewed internally by both myself as well as Sarah Harward, our new CARES Administrative Secretary, as well as two individuals from our finance team. That would be Sherry Gale and Kathy Olson.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion to the motion or questions? Okay, let's vote on this. The motion before the board is that the board approve USBE staff setting aside up to $14,100,000 for the Utah K-12 Coronavirus Relief Fund to award local education agency grants with a $5,000 base award for K-12 Coronavirus Relief Solution for reimbursement for classroom supplies, enhancements, and equipment. So board members at this time, please vote. It appears the voting is complete and the motion passed. The voting was unanimous. And I think we still, it appears that Scott Nielsen hasn't joined us. So if somebody sees that he has, then if somebody would bring that to my attention, I appreciate it. Okay, Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, do you have more you want to discuss on this item?
Chair, if it's okay, can we go to the discretionary funds report? Can you hear me okay, Chair?
So you're kind of breaking up, Scott.
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, I'm.
Okay. Okay, we need to go to the discretionary funds report, please, in the backups. With Jeff driving, can you go to the, yeah, there you go, perfect, thank you. So Chair and members of the board, here is the status of your discretionary funds. Starting in the upper right-hand corner, the different types of funds, general funds, federal release, land exchange, and dedicated credits. Anytime there's a request for use of these funds, we highlight that request in yellow. Every year, the superintendent, the board, or we request that the board allot $150,000 out of your state funds, your state unrestricted funds. So if you were to approve that today, the $150,000 request, the remaining balance of your state funds would go from $172,750 or $172,715 to roughly $22,750. So with that, Chair, we respectfully request that a motion be made to allot the superintendent $150,000 for use at her discretion. Subject to any questions, sir.
Board Member Belknap.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the board approve the $150,000 of state unrestricted funds for the superintendent to use at her discretion.
Second,
Yes, sir.
Board Member Cannon.
Okay, do you want to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Okay. Board Member Cannon, your hand's still raised. Did you want to speak to the motion or do you have a
Yes.
question? Okay.
No, I'd just like to speak to the benefit I've seen from allowing the superintendent some amount of discretionary funds. I know that our current superintendent and past superintendents have utilized this money to do some wonderful, creative, and supportive things for the state of education in Utah with this money. So I'm in favor of giving this money to our superintendent.
Any other discussion? Okay. Seeing none, the motion before the board is that the board move $150,000 from the state unrestricted fund to the superintendent's discretionary fund. Did I state that correctly, Scott? Okay. Board Member Earl. Dang, I was going to call it to a vote. Now I'll have to say it again, but I'll try to remember it. We're not voting yet. So Board Member Earl.
I just have a question. Is there a point where we have a accounting for what it was, even though it's in a discretionary, to know where those funds went from previous years? I'm just wondering. I'm not recalling.
Deputy Superintendent Jones, that particular line item, do we have access to that and how?
Chair Huntsman, we do. I just remind the board and Board Member Earl, hopefully this answers your question. So if you all recall, our carry forward dollars were swept, or brought forward from the legislature. So that included the balance that she had before. So basically we're going back now that that money was returned to us. There was part of the process of all the budget adjustments that took place. So we're just reinstating that amount. But I can tell costing, so that was last year. So if you want previous year expenditures, I can provide those in detail to you.
No, that's fine, Scott. I was just wondering if that was accessible. I'm not questioning that.
Absolutely.
It was to call on it is a kind of a thing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. So you're muted.
I was muting because I was getting a lot of echoing. So I'm thinking I'm helping, but I'm probably not. So the motion before the board is that the board move from the state move $150,000 from the state unrestricted fund to the superintendent's discretionary fund. All those at this time, board members, please vote. The voting is complete and the motion passes unanimously.
Sir, that concludes the monthly budget report with the requested actions. Pending any other questions or concerns by board members.
Okay, board members, any questions, comments for Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones? Thank you. Vice Chair Cummins, am I seeing that am I missing anything? Are we almost, we're back on schedule? Is that what I'm observing?
We're back in order, a little bit behind.
So we're
back to item 8. Everything else is complete as far as I can tell.
No, we're a little bit behind right here. That one's open. Yep. Okay, I think we have time to, we don't have time for that.